The story of a poor person begging for food being criticized by villagers. But no one knew that person was a benefactor who saved a whole village in a past life. That story is not just a fairy tale. It is the truth of cause and effect, of blessings and virtue, which people often summarize with the short saying, "Live with virtue, and you can eat to your heart's content." But what does it mean to have virtue? How do we know if we are possessing virtue or slowly oozing it all up? Is a person with much wealth and a tall house a person of virtue? Or is the gentle person living simply, who is always lucky and passes through storms unharmed? The one who truly carries great virtue. Virtue has no form, no sound, and is not as dazzling as fame, property, or beauty. But it is a silent capital that everyone living needs to have. Some people step out onto the street and meet noble helpers. Some people, despite little education, become superiors, and everything they do flows smoothly. There are also those who sit doing nothing yet disaster strikes, or who do good deeds but find no peace or joy. In the same human life, why is every situation different? Perhaps because the virtue within each person is different. Blessings are things that can be seen, but virtue is something that cannot be measured. It can only be felt through life. A person with virtue makes others feel at peace wherever they go. Their words need not be loud, but everyone who hears them absorbs them. Their deeds need not be showy, but everyone is grateful. As for those without virtue, even with high talent and great intellect, they easily encounter disaster, get entangled in suffering, and attract misfortune. Many of us were taught by our parents from a young age to live with virtue, to eat to our heart's content. But growing up and struggling with life, how many still remember that saying? Sometimes because of a meal, because of competition, because of a little winning and losing, we forget the virtue that silently keeps us at peace. Some people mistakenly think that virtue is a matter of religion, of temples, but actually virtue is the root of personality, the thing behind every good deed we do, the foundation for a sustainable life. Just look around. From a mother enduring hardship to raise her child, to an honest farmer doing business, or an old person at the village entrance picking up trash in front of the temple gate every day. They have no fame, no reputation, no power, but they leave a very deep respect in people's hearts. That is virtue. A person living with virtue does not need to compete. Life seems to have saved a path for them. It may be slow but sure, maybe not rich, but not miserable, maybe not famous, but loved, respected, and trusted. So where does virtue come from? Is it true that only doing charity brings virtue? Or must one chant sutras and bow to Buddha to generate virtue? Or is virtue created in a past life and cannot be added to or subtracted from in this life? That is what I invite you all to contemplate together, because speaking of virtue is speaking of the root of blessings, the inner essence of a person living toward goodness. And in Buddhist teachings, there are three things that generate blessings and virtue: body, speech, and mind. Thinking good, speaking good, doing good. But doing good alone is not enough. Doing good out of fear of bad consequences is different from doing good out of compassion. Doing good to exchange for blessings is different from doing good out of a deep understanding of cause and effect. And it is right in the mind of non-seeking, non-attachment, that virtue begins to crystallize. I once met a small-statured man working as a security guard at a large apartment complex. Everyone who met him liked him, not because he was talented, but because he was always polite, solicitous, and remembered the name of every resident. Someone asked him why he was always happy. He smiled and said a very gentle sentence: "Live correctly, heaven will love you." That was a person without much education, but who understood life better than 100 pages of books. He didn't know how to chant sutras, didn't know meditation, but his heart was always at peace. Not jealous, not envious, not snatching. That virtue is not learned in school. It is born from an inner mind of gratitude, humility, and dwelling peacefully with what one has. In the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha taught, a person of virtue is like the scent of flowers flying against the wind. It travels far and spreads wide. Even if that person does not speak or show off, their virtue still reveals itself. Virtue is like that, not noisy, but echoing far, not showy. But a person with virtue, even if poor, is respected. Even with little education, is loved. Conversely, a person lacking virtue, even with high power and position, will sooner or later lose prestige and lose the people who love them. So, living in a society that values material things, success, and prominence, people who maintain virtue are sometimes considered foolish, passive, or weak. But let us not forget that virtue is what keeps the mind from being swept away by life, keeps the heart from getting entangled in disaster. Virtue is like the root, blessings are like the sweet fruit. Sweet fruit may run out, but if the root remains, fruit will come again. A person who loses blessings but still has virtue will eventually be compensated. But a person who has blessings but lacks virtue will see their blessings run dry. So how does a Buddhist living in the world know if they are living with virtue? How does one nurture virtue every day? How does one keep that virtue when life has many temptations? And if one has accidentally damaged their virtue, can it be built up again? For the answer, I would like to borrow the Buddha's words from the sutras, ancient stories from the time the Buddha was still in the world, along with stories very close to life today, so that you can see that virtue is not a distant matter, but a matter of daily living. Living with virtue is living how in daily life. There are things the naked eye does not see, the ear does not hear, but they are the very foundation nurturing a human life. Virtuous conduct, or briefly called virtue, is one of those things. Living with virtue is not living for others to praise, but living so that the mind is at peace, the heart is not ashamed before others, and not ashamed before oneself. A person living with virtue does not need to prove they are a good person, because their presence has already soothed the anger of others, has made everyone trust and respect them, not by title, but by character. In Buddhist teachings, virtue does not lie in form, but in keeping the mind from doing evil, diligently practicing good, and keeping the mind and thoughts pure. That is the Buddha's teaching in the Dhammapada, verse 183. Cease all evil, cultivate the good, purify one's own mind. This is the teaching of the Buddhas. Virtue, in the light of Buddha's Dharma, is crystallized from precepts, concentration, and wisdom. It is a person who knows how to keep precepts, knows how to be awakened in every behavior, word, and thought. It is a person who not only does good things, but does them with a compassionate heart, not expecting a return. It is a person ready to quietly help the world without leaving a trace of the ego. A person with virtue, someone who knows how to respect those above and yield to those below, knows how to love the weak, knows how to listen before judging, knows how to step back when they see they are about to cause hurt. A person with virtue lives simply, but from them emits a kind of light that makes others want to be near, want to rely on. As for a person without virtue, even if intelligent, talented, or wealthy, they will eventually create karma. They might achieve what they want, but their mind is uneasy, their heart is fearful, and their life is fragile because there is no foundation inside to support it. Living with virtue is living knowing how to see the right within the wrong. Keeping a straight heart amidst the crooked currents of life means mastering words, behaviors, and even secret thoughts that no one sees. Because we know, heaven knows, earth knows, and we know. Living with virtue is living directed inward, nurturing the inner mind, like a person tending the soul before sowing seeds. Because if there is no virtue, sown blessings will not sprout. If there is no virtue, doing good deeds easily turns into showing off. If there is no virtue, practicing religion is just a formality. Therefore, virtue is the base, the root. All merit, all good blessings, all good results sprout from that root. In the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha taught, O monks, there are 5 things that lead to decline: having no gratitude, not knowing how to repay kindness, bad moral conduct, a mind full of greed, living lazily, and not knowing how to protect virtue. Virtue is not only a precious quality, but also a wall protecting us from the risks of life. When people live lacking virtue, they easily become loose, easily fall into greed, hatred, and delusion, and ultimately harm themselves. In a sermon at the Bamboo Grove Vihara, the Buddha taught the mendicants that a person who does not keep precepts does not practice compassion, even if they recite many sutras and perform many rituals, is still not considered a true practitioner. Virtue is the light of the monastic. Virtue is the strength of the householder. Without virtue, blessings cannot stay long. In another passage, the Buddha used a very vivid image. A person without virtue is like a house built on sand. Wind blows, rain soaks, waves crash, and it collapses. A person with virtue is like a house on rock. Even if the sky thunders, it stands firm amidst life. Therefore, in the threefold training precepts, concentration, wisdom precepts are the root part. Keeping precepts is keeping virtue. Living a moral life is nurturing virtue. From there, concentration is born. With concentration, wisdom is born. And wisdom, seeing clearly the nature of cause and effect in life, not being deluded, not being attached. The story of the blacksmith in a terrible drought. Long ago, in a small village at the foot of a mountain in a border region, there was a blacksmith named Lam. He was not a rich man, nor was he talented beyond others. He only knew one trade, forging iron. He lived gently and quietly. Whatever anyone hired him to do, he did. He never spoke harshly to anyone, nor did he promise anything he didn't keep. In the village, there were people better off and more dashing, but the most trusted person was still Mr. Lamb. People sent their children to him to learn the trade and entrusted money to him for safekeeping, not because he was highly educated, but because anyone who lived near him felt reassured. One year there was a severe drought. The fields were dry, the grass burnt, the wells empty, the streams dry. The whole village was in turmoil seeking water sources. People fought, cursed each other, and blamed the heavens and each other. In that chaos, only a corner of Mr. Lamb's smithy remained peaceful. People asked him, "Mr. Lamb, why didn't you worry about storing water beforehand? Why didn't you worry about moving your house down to the stream?" He smiled gently. "I don't worry about water. I worry about virtue because I believe heaven and earth will not abandon a person living righteously." Then no one noticed that Mr. Lamb often went up the mountain early in the morning, digging soil and sweating, placing bamboo tubes to guide water. He said, "Water isn't underground. It is in the human heart." Everyone thought he was crazy. A month later, water from the hill poured into the village through the bamboo tubes led from the rock crevices. Everyone was amazed. It turned out that for years, Mr. Lamb had silently placed each bamboo section to connect the flow, built small dams, and led the water source from the high stream close to the village like a primitive but magnificent irrigation work. He didn't tell anyone, didn't ask for repayment, didn't need anyone to know. He just quietly forged each whole blade, patched each broken bucket, and when the water returned, he acted as if nothing had happened. Since then, the village escaped drought. Not only was there water, but people's hearts also softened. People began to look at him as a teacher, though he never preached, never chanted sutras, just lived a righteous, modest life and believed deeply in cause and effect. 10 years later, Mr. Lamb passed away in his sleep. No one knew, but when they found out, the whole village cried, not because he died, but because a person like him made them treasure again the silent virtue that life today has forgotten. When the story of Mr. Lamb was retold at a temple, an old teacher said one sentence: "He never went to the temple but lived like a monk," because virtue lies not in titles, but in every behavior. Through the story of Mr. Lamb, we see that virtue does not need to be proved. Virtue only needs to be lived. A person with virtue does not need to be noisy to leave a long-lasting influence. A person living righteously is protected by heaven. A person maintaining virtue will naturally attract blessings. In a human life, things that can be lost are assets, beauty, and fame. But the thing that is not lost is virtue. And virtue is also the only thing we can carry with us through many lives and existences. It silently transforms karma, silently protecting us through periods of suffering so we do not slide down. Therefore, living with virtue is not a choice, but a necessary lifestyle for anyone wanting true peace. Virtue is not born from a big action, but from every small deed, every word that doesn't hurt anyone, every pure thought amidst a life full of entanglements. Virtue is the light of the mind, the heart that knows how to bow down so as not to step on anyone, and knows how to raise its head when needed to uphold what is right. Part 2. A person living without virtue, even if rich, still suffers. There is a paradox that the older one gets, and the longer one lives in the world, the easier it is to see clearly. Not everyone who is rich is happy. Not everyone who is successful is joyful. There are people with tall houses and wide doors, eating well and dressing well, money piled in warehouses, cars lined up in rows, but their minds are uneasy. Their sleep is fitful. Their hearts are always anxious, angry, envious. Looking from the outside, they seem to have it all, but in reality, suffering silently gnaws at them every day. Why? Because they have blessings, wealth, but lack virtue. That means having the fruit, but lacking the root. Having material things, but lacking the spiritual light to preserve them, to enjoy them with full mindfulness. The Buddha taught very clearly that blessings and virtue are two sides of the same coin. Blessings help us have good conditions, money, health, opportunities, helping us use blessings correctly, not wastefully, not harming people, not creating bad karma. Having blessings without virtue is like having a tree laden with fruit, but not knowing how to keep it. Eating at the wrong time, eating without knowing when is enough, and then getting sick. A rich person lacking virtue easily falls into three dangerous paths. First is bottomless greed. The more they have, the more they want. Wanting without stopping leads to exhaustion without rest. Second is arrogance, thinking oneself superior to others, breeding contempt, creating karma through words and actions. Third is loneliness in the heart. The higher the fame, the more fear of losing it. The fewer good friends, the less trust. It is not without reason that the ancients taught, rich without virtue is like a big boat without a rudder. Sooner or later will drift astray. In reality, there are people who spend their whole lives only thinking of business, accumulation, investment, expansion. But when they reach old age, their hearts begin to feel empty. Many of them seek out temples not because of faith, but because there is nowhere else to rely on. Money does not make the heart calm. Relatives are distant. Relationships are all built on benefits with no room for affection or morality. They are people rich in assets but poor in faith, and that is the true suffering. So living without virtue means having money but not knowing how to spend it, having people beside you but not knowing how to love, having good opportunities but not knowing how to keep them. Conversely, a person with virtue, though materially poor, is rich in heart, sufficient in mind, and peaceful in every sleep. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha taught that a fool, even if living 100 years without keeping precepts, without practicing, is not equal to living one day wholesomely, knowing how to live mindfully with a pure and peaceful heart. And in many sermons, the Buddha emphasized, assets do not guarantee happiness. Only a wholesome mind is the solid foundation of true happiness. The story Venerable Sariputta once told about a rich man who had 5 warehouses of gold, but died in misery because he was stingy, miserly, shared with no one, and whose heart was full of suspicion, is a clear lesson. The Buddha taught that a person with assets who does not know how to practice charity, does not nurture compassion, is no different from a person carrying gems in a chest, but dying of thirst in the middle of a desert. Virtue is the brightness of the mind. Losing virtue is darkness. When the mind is dark, even with a diamond in hand, the heart still feels lacking. The story of the rich man Bakila and the fortune without virtue. In ancient times, in a wealthy region near the city of Savatthi, there was a rich man named Bakila. The whole region knew him as one of the richest men. His granaries were full of rice, gold and silver were piled high, and his cattle were countless. He had hundreds of servants, and his land stretched to the foot of the mountain. However, Bakila was famous not for being rich, but for being stingy, harsh, and not believing in cause and effect. He did not believe in charity, did not believe in the afterlife, did not believe in good karma. He always thought money was made by him, not granted by anyone. and that giving it away meant losing it. Even when his wife and children suggested offering robes to the Buddha or doing good deeds to help the poor, he got angry, scolding, "Giving one coin is losing one coin. Everyone enjoys their own luck. Who told them to be poor? It's because they are stupid." Back Ki La lived like that all his life, saving every grain of rice, cutting down the servants' rice rations, and forcing his daughter to marry rich to gain more wealth. Everyone in his house was afraid of him, afraid even when he smiled, because his smile had no light. One day he fell ill. A strange disease caused pain in every joint. His eyes blurred, his ears rang. Many good doctors gave up. He couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. He writhed in his cold mansion. His wife and children invited monks to chant sutras. He shouted, "Get out. Why chant? It doesn't cure the disease." Then he died without a final word, without a good vow, without anyone seeing light in his eyes at the last moment. After death, he was reborn as a hungry ghost due to his stinginess, anger, and contempt for the three jewels. In that realm he wandered in the wild forest, hungry, thirsty, miserable, howling in the night like a wild beast. The wealth of his past life, no matter how great, could not be taken with him. He left behind only a bad reputation and a painful lesson for generations. A few years later, his son, who understood the Dharma, gave away wealth widely in charity, built temples, and made offerings. Thanks to that, the father's bad karma was gradually transformed. But that is the aftermath. People remember back Ki La not because he was rich, but because his wealth without virtue led to a heartbreaking ending. From that story, the Buddha preached to his disciples, "Wealth without virtue is like honey on a knife blade, sweet at first but sharp and dangerous. A person without precepts, without a compassionate heart, even if rich, cannot escape suffering." Through the story of the rich man back Ki La, we clearly see one thing. Being rich while lacking virtue is a risk. That person may enjoy many comforts, but without the protection of a wholesome mind, sooner or later, they will fall into suffering. The body lives in a castle, but the mind is like being imprisoned in a jail. The Buddha taught that wealth is only temporary, while virtue is permanent. Virtue cannot be bought with money. Virtue is only obtained from a mindful lifestyle, from humility, from knowing how to share, knowing how to let go, knowing how to keep the mind from harming anyone. Living without planting virtue is no different from harvesting beautiful flowers without roots in the ground. Just one gust of wind and everything vanishes. But living with virtue is like a tree deeply rooted in the soul. Even in drought, it still has enough vitality, and when the season comes, blooms again. If your heart is suddenly moved while listening to these words, please stop for a moment. Please give the channel a subscription, like a pure lotus blooming in the stream of life. Press like, as if making the lamp of mindfulness brighter in the quiet night, and leave a comment, Namo Amitabha Buddha, like a good vow echoing in the void, Namo Buddha. Part 3. Blessings and virtue are things that cannot be borrowed. In modern life, people can borrow money to do business, borrow capital to start a startup, borrow knowledge through books, borrow strength through associates, and even borrow the image and prestige of others to build a brand for themselves. But there is absolutely one thing that cannot be borrowed, nor transferred or kept for safekeeping. That is blessings and virtue. GC. Blessings and virtue are things that can only be created, cannot be begged for, cannot be bought, cannot be passed from one person to another like worldly assets. Even if parents have great blessings, if the children live wrongly, they cannot fully inherit them. Even if friends live virtuously, if one does not nurture a good heart oneself, one cannot enjoy the benefits. Blessings and virtue are a type of asset that arises only from one's own inner mind and behavior. In a Dharma talk, I once heard a high monk say very simply but profoundly, blessings and virtue are each person's private account. They cannot be consigned, cannot be withdrawn by others. How we live each day, what we think, what we do is moving the numbers in that account. Those words sound simple, but the more you think, the deeper they are. In society, wealthy people are often respected, but in the way, people rich in virtue are the ones truly loved and respected, because blessings from money, once used up, are finished, but blessings from virtue of the mind follow even into rebirth. Therefore, blessings and virtue cannot be borrowed. If someone lives wrongly and thinks that they only need to go to the temple to ask monks to chant sutras, ask practitioners to dedicate merit, or make many offerings to redeem blessings, then that is a deviated understanding. Dedication of merit is only effective when the person dedicating is sincere and the receiver has wholesome roots and an open heart to receive. But the root remains each person's own karma. No one can practice for another. No one can carry virtue for another, nor can anyone fall into suffering or enjoy good fruit on behalf of another. Cause and effect is inherently fair like that. In the Majjhima Nikaya, the Buddha affirmed, "You are the owners of your karma, the heirs of your karma, the womb of your karma." Karma is the relative, the kin, the refuge. That is, each person must harvest what they themselves have sown. One cannot borrow another's virtue to avoid one's own fruit. One cannot pay off a wrong cause by a few formal good actions. If you look closely, you will see people who live very sincerely, but still have to go through sickness and difficulty, not because they lack virtue, but because past karma was too heavy, and now the conditions are ripe for the fruit to manifest. But if they continue to live wholesomely, with a bright mind, without resentment, that karma will manifest in peace, will be gradually transformed, and the future fruit will be lighter and better. Conversely, if a person lives wrongly, but temporarily sees smoothness and wealth, do not rush to think they are lucky. Maybe that is past blessings remaining. But if they continue to spend without planting more roots of virtue, that account of cause and effect will gradually run dry. In Dhammapada verse 127, the Buddha taught, "Neither in the sky, nor in the middle of the ocean, nor by entering the cleft of the mountains, is there known a place on earth where, escaping, a man may be freed from his evil deed." That verse emphasizes one thing. Karma, that is, what we have done, thought, and said always follows us like a shadow follows a form. And from that, we understand further that only we ourselves can transform karma. Only we ourselves can create virtue and blessings for ourselves. The Buddha does not bestow blessings. Monks do not save souls. The Buddha's Dharma only lights the path. Walking is each person's job, and that path must be walked by every good deed, every gentle word, every clear thought. Once, while preaching at Rajir, someone asked the Buddha, "Lord, if I live virtuously, but my husband lives wickedly, Can I dedicate merit to make my husband suffer less? The Buddha replied, a person throwing a stone into water cannot stop ripples. A person dropping a lotus into water cannot stop the fragrance. The husband creating karma must transform it himself. The wife can only be a lamp, not the path itself. The ancients said, cultivate oneself, accumulate virtue, nourish the mind, transform karma. There is no step that can be done by another. Everything needs one's own correction. The story of Mada, the borrowed halo. When the Buddha was still in the world, in the city of Savatthi, there was a courtesan famous throughout the capital named Mada. She had beauty that could topple cities, a voice like silk, and walked like wind-swaying willow branches. Countless princes, nobles, wealthy merchants, and powerful officials were infatuated with her, gifting her gold, jade, silk, and carriages in exchange for a smile or a misty night. People honored her as the thousand-tailed beauty, meaning her beauty was worth 1,000 taels of gold. Mada was very intelligent, knew how to read scriptures, understood etiquette, spoke skillfully, and was especially good at pleasing people. But behind all that light, she lived like a boor, borrowing her parents' blessings, borrowing the favor of kings, borrowing the love of the world, to live luxuriously without building a solid foundation of virtue for herself. Mada's parents were devout Buddhists. They used to make offerings to monks and nuns, give widely to charity, feed the poor, and support the three jewels. Thanks to that, Mada was born with great blessings. From a young age, she was beautiful, spoke pleasantly, and was loved by many. Growing up, she knew how to use the advantage of beauty to step into the upper class, enjoying every comfort life could offer. However, she lived to enjoy, not to practice. She enjoyed what was sown in the previous life, but did not continue to sow for the next life. She used beauty to gain power, used fame to gain gold, used others' affection to gain a position, but her heart respected no one, kept no precepts, did not know charity, and did not believe in cause and effect. She once said, blessings are what we have ready, no need to sow, just enjoy. That was a starting point for a tragedy later on. One day when she was over 30, her beauty remained, but was not like when she was 18. Those who were once infatuated with her began to seek newer, younger faces. Mada felt something very strange. Her heart gradually became lonely. The absence of praises, gifts, and infatuated looks made her anxious. She began to seek out Dharma talks by spiritual teachers, visiting the temple as a hobby, not yet from a heart of learning, until one day the world-honored one preached at the Jetavana monastery, mentioning the borrowed nature of human life. He said, like a beautiful flower without scent, like sweet honey without roots, a person living without virtue is like a lamp lit without oil. Mada, sitting far away, heard those words as if someone had splashed cold water into her heart. She was stunned. For so many years, she had lived relying on others' light without ever lighting a lamp for herself. She knelt down asking to meet the Buddha. In the meeting, Mada shed tears. She asked, Lord, I have lived borrowing the beauty of a past life, borrowing the grace of my parents, borrowing the hearts of people to decorate my life. Now that I am losing everything, can I borrow anyone's blessings to continue living? The Buddha just smiled, raised his hand to pick up a fallen leaf. He said, this leaf was once green, once soft, once fragrant, but because it separated from the tree it fell, just like you, because you did not root yourself in self-discipline and practice. Even with great blessings, you cannot keep them. He said again, no one walks for another on the long road of samsara. No one sows virtue for another. No one keeps precepts for another. Good blessings are not passed from hand to hand like rice and salt in the market. Only by lighting one's own lamp can one walk in the night. Mother burst into tears. From that day on, she retreated to a quiet place, vowed to keep the 5 precepts, and lived purely. Those who once honored her as a beauty icon no longer saw her at banquets. Asking around, they found out she had gone to a hermitage, sweeping the yard, cooking rice, listening to the Dharma daily. Some call her foolish, regretting a once brilliant life, but no one knew that was when she was happiest. No longer having to borrow anything from anyone. No longer afraid of losing anything. Each day living in mindfulness was a day she rebuilt her capital of virtue for the next life. Later, she became a nun and attained the fruit of Srimati Sotapanna, the first stage of sainthood. That is proof that even if one has accidentally used up blessings, if one knows to turn back and practice, one can still rebuild the foundation of virtue oneself. Through the story of Maudhau, we see that no matter how great the blessings, if there is no virtue to preserve them, it is like a tall house without a foundation. Sooner or later, it will shake. Duty, fame, money, all are just means, not the foundation. The foundation is an upright mind, good conduct, and broad virtue. We can be born into blessings, but living so as not to exhaust blessings while creating more virtue for the next life is something worth pondering, because no one can transmit virtue for us. No one can light the lamp for us. No one can carry karma for us. Blessings and virtue are a spiritual account. Only we can top it up or drain it dry. Part 4. Keeping virtue is keeping the root of blessings. Some people ask, how do we keep blessings? I answer, to keep blessings, one must keep virtue, because blessings are the fruit, while virtue is the root. If virtue is lost, blessings will also drift away. If virtue is present, blessings will be born. Blessings are like sweet fruits and fragrant flowers. Virtue is like good soil and deep roots. Everyone likes a tree that bears fruit, but if one does not tend the soil, does not water the roots, the fruit, however sweet, will last only one season. But if one knows to keep the root, the tree will bear fruit for many seasons. The fruit will get bigger, the flowers more fragrant. Keeping virtue is keeping a solid root in every thought, word, and behavior. It is keeping the mind from arrogance when successful, from jealousy when seeing others better than oneself. It is keeping words from hurting anyone, deeds from causing suffering to anyone, and the heart from generating greed, hatred, and delusion. Blessings are things that can be consumed, but virtue is something that can be nurtured further. A person with virtue, even if blessings run out, can start over. But a person without virtue, even if granted blessings, will destroy them all with their own hands. Therefore, keeping virtue is not only a way to protect blessings, but also a way to transform suffering and rebuild life. There are people to whom blessings come, but who do not know how to live. They use blessings to show off, to compete, to chase after arrogance. The nice car, the tall house, the high position, those things are not wrong. But if the mind lacks virtue, they become causes for generating karma. Conversely, a person with virtue finds sufficiency even in poverty. Living amidst suffering, they still find joy because virtue depends not on circumstances, but on mindfulness in the heart. Keeping virtue is knowing how to preserve every good seed we sow daily, from soft words, gentle eyes, honest deeds. It is keeping an honest heart amidst a world full of deceit, keeping humility amidst competition, keeping kindness even when no one responds. That is keeping the root. If the root is kept, blessings will come without fear. Keeping virtue is also keeping the lamp of mindfulness in an impermanent life. In the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha taught that there are 5 things that keep good blessings from wearing away. 1. Knowing shame when doing wrong. 2. Knowing embarrassment when creating evil. 3. Knowing how to listen to good things. 4. Knowing how to respect virtuous people. 5. Knowing how to keep the mind from being negligent. That means keeping virtue is not just doing big things, but keeping the inner mind from being loose or dissolute, from knowing shame when wrong to respecting good people. All are expressions of a person with virtue. In Dhammapada verse 204, the Buddha taught, health is the greatest gift, contentment is the greatest wealth, a trusty friend is the best kinsman, Nibbana is the greatest bliss. Wait. Checking the source text translation. Sanbit Ji Law Jo, Ju Ji Ji Law and Vui. Tam Tan Keng Su K Chi A La G C V I T Mwen Ji Gi. Living knowing sufficiency is wealth. Keeping precepts is peace. Joy. A pure mind without sorrow is virtue transcending all time. That verse is short but contains the entire foundation of blessings. Knowing sufficiency, knowing how to keep, knowing purity. Those 3 things are the root of virtue, and from there, all good blessings will bloom. Once the Buddha compared a person living without virtue to a pot with a hole in the bottom. No matter how much water is poured in, it flows away. Conversely, a person with virtue is a sealed pot, keeping every drop of blessings. So keeping virtue is keeping the bottom of the pot, not letting the merit of practice, good deeds, and kindness be lost. The story of the woodcutter and the banyan tree in the forest. In a remote village in ancient northern India, there was a poor woodcutter named Suma. He had no parents or relatives and lived in a makeshift thatched hut by the edge of the old forest. Every day, Suma carried his axe into the forest to chop wood, bringing it back to sell at the village market in exchange for rice and salt. He was poor but very honest. If someone bought wood and lacked money, he happily let them owe him. Once, when an old beggar woman fainted in the market, he did not hesitate to give her his lunch bowl. Once, he found a wallet with a few gold coins inside, enough for him to live comfortably for a year. But he took it to the owner's house to return it. People asked why he didn't keep it. He just smiled. "It's not mine. I'm afraid to take it." Everyone in the village loved him and cherished him, even though he had nothing but an axe and a heart. No one could hate a person living as honestly as him. One day, there was a violent thunderstorm. Rain poured, thunder roared across the sky. Suma was chopping wood when he saw a huge banyan tree in the middle of the forest struck by lightning. The trunk split open, smoke rose, and the smell of burning wood was pungent. He ran over to look and saw a small stone hollow at the base of the tree. Inside was an old Buddha statue, perhaps left behind by ancient people or worship ere long ago. Suma knelt down and clasped his hands, not because he understood Buddhism, but because a strange awe rose in his heart. He looked at the cracked Buddha statue, the eyes still gentle amidst the smoke and fire. He bowed his head and told himself, "If I have the affinity, please let me take the statue home to worship." Arriving home, he washed the statue with rainwater, placed it on a bamboo table, clasped his hands, and lit an incense stick. From that day on, every morning he would bow 3 times before going to the forest. No one taught him, no one told him to. It was just that in his heart he felt he should keep a little reverence. Then a strange thing happened from the day he brought the statue home. His business gradually became favorable. The wood he brought to the market sold quickly. Buyers praised the good wood and gave extra rice and salt. One day, a guest from afar stopped by the village, saw his honesty, and hired him to transport wood regularly at double the price. Villagers began to whisper that the woodcutter must have gotten lucky, but only Suma understood it wasn't luck. It was the change from within his heart. Since knowing how to bow to the Buddha, knowing how to keep precepts, no killing, no lying, no stealing, his heart became light. He worked without feeling tired. Whatever he said carried no burden. He slept very well at night. That is blessings born from virtue. One day, a greedy person in the village saw his business thriving and lurked to see if there was any secret. They discovered the Buddha statue in his house. One rumored to 10 to 100. People flocked to ask the statue for wealth. Some even offered money, 10 gifts, hoping the statue would help them get rich like Suma. Suma just shook his head. "The statue gives me nothing. It is only that, since worshipping the statue, I have known to keep my mind, and with the mind work becomes good. It is not that the statue is magical, but that one's heart is righteous." Hearing this, people didn't understand and rumored that he hid magic charms. A year later, a huge storm swept through, blowing down many houses. Suma's hut also lost its roof, but the Buddha statue remained upright in the middle of the altar. Villagers ran over and saw him bowing amidst the tornado. Everyone was moved. They no longer doubted him, but saw in him something very solid, very peaceful, very real. From then on, Suma was invited to teach the children in the village how to live, not teaching letters, but teaching how to keep one's heart. He taught the children to know how to apologize, say thank you, and speak the truth. The banyan tree that was struck by lightning years ago was replanted. Under the shade of the tree, the Buddha statue was placed back. That was no longer forgotten. Everyone who came saw a sentence carved into the stone written by his own hand. Keeping virtue is keeping the root. If the root exists, the fruit naturally grows. Decades later, Suma passed away on a peaceful morning. People recounted that he sat leaning against the banyan tree, hands on his knees, eyes half closed as if sleeping, lips still holding a slight smile like mist. The Buddha statue remained at the foot of the wall. People placed a wooden board carving the woodcutter's last words. No need for great blessings, just a heart not swayed by the wind. If your heart has ever softened hearing the story of a woodcutter living simply, but keeping virtue, if there are times in life you ask yourself what you are living for, then perhaps today's Dharma talk has touched something in your mind. I invite you to click subscribe to the Hang audio channel as a good vow set into the void that I vowed to live, keeping virtue amidst a world that is forgetting it. Or leave a comment Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, like a small lotus flower lighting up a good root together in life today. Part 5. To have blessed children, teach them to keep virtue. There is a silent but deep concern in the hearts of many parents. That is the wish for their children to become good people, live with morality, have blessings, and not suffer in life. However, in a society chasing achievements, degrees, and appearances, sometimes the simplest things like teaching children to live truthfully, live kindly, and live with virtue are pushed aside, making way for questions about which school to attend, what scores to get, how much money to earn. Every parent wants to leave assets for their children, but many forget that assets can be lost, while character and virtue are things that follow the child throughout life. A person with virtue is loved wherever they go, even in difficulty. Noble people help. A person without virtue, even if rich, will soon wither. Yet how many people teach their children that? Some invest in their children learning foreign languages from a young age, but skip teaching them to speak truthful words. Some buy their children good cars and fancy schools, but forget to teach them to bow to the elderly. Some worrying about their children knowing how to deal with the world, but do not teach them to keep a humble heart. Keep a heart that doesn't hurt people. That is why if you want your children to have blessings, you must teach them to keep virtue. Blessings without virtue are dangerous. Virtue without blessings can still be built up gradually. But if both virtue and blessings are missing, the child's life easily gets entangled in karma, and their heart easily gets lost. Keeping virtue gives the child a foundation unseen, but determining everything above. To want children to live filially, parents must live righteously. To want children to know how to share, the family must have an air of compassion. To want children not to be greedy, parents must teach them to live sufficiently. To want children to meet good conditions, one must be the first to sow good seeds. In Buddhism, there is a very good tradition. Before transmitting the Dharma to a disciple, the teacher always teaches precepts, teaches dignity, teaches how to live as a human before learning to be a saint. Likewise, to want children to enjoy blessings, one must nurture the mind and virtue for the child from childhood. In the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha once told the people that there are 5 things parents must do for their children. 1. Prevent the child from doing evil. 2. Teach the child to live morally. 3. Teach the child a trade. 4. Arrange marriage at the right time. 5. Hand over the inheritance lawfully. Among them, the first and most important thing is preventing the child from doing evil and teaching morality. That is the emphasis from the world-honored one himself, that the foundation of a child is not knowledge, but directing the mind toward goodness. A child raised on virtuous conduct, on respect for superiors and yielding to inferiors, on knowing how to love the weak, knowing how to keep promises, knowing how to repent when wrong, will be a precious person, even without high degrees. Conversely, a young person with education and status, but who does not know how to keep virtue, does not understand cause and effect, only needs one stumble to trade away their entire career, reputation, and even the blessings left by parents. In the Sigalovada Sutta, the Buddha taught, parents are the east, the sun of the child's life. If the sun does not shine with morality, the children will easily get caught in darkness wherever they go. The Buddha used the image of the east to indicate the place of beginning. The beginning of a human being lies in the virtue transmitted by parents. The story of the boy lighting a lamp under the straw roof in the rural area of Nadi by the gentle Ganges River. There was a small village, poor but peaceful. In that village, there was a makeshift straw hut, the home of a mother and child. The mother's name was Sita, and the boy's name was Ananja, meaning joy, but ironically, from a young age, Ananja was a child who rarely laughed. His father died when he was only 3. The family was poor. The mother worked hard as a hired laborer. Meals were erratic, rice mixed with sorghum. All for the lamp had to be saved drop by drop, while children in the village had nice clothes to go to school. Ananja picked up firewood by day and carried water by evening. However, what made people admire them was that despite being poor, mother and son Sita never begged, never complained, and especially never taught the child to be deceitful even once. Once, Ananja was assigned to sell the first bundle of firewood. The beer paid 1 coin too much, he knew, but remained silent and brought it home. As soon as Sita heard, she took her child's hand and led him back to that person's house to return it. On the way, she said, "Son, wood can be sold again, money can be earned again, but virtue, if lost, no one will ever sell it to us again." Ananja looked up at his mother, seeing tears quietly falling. Since then, he understood that one might be poor, but the heart must not be torn. At the age of 10, Ananja liked to learn letters. Every night he held a sharpened bamboo stick to write on the ground, using ash as ink, having no oil lamp. He used dry wood to burn a small pile in the corner of the house to get light to study. One night the wind was strong and the straw roof almost caught fire. The mother discovered it and was very angry, but didn't hit him. She just hugged her child, whispering, "If you want to study, Mom will try to weave more mats. Ask people for a few drops of oil, but don't burn the house down. Mom's life can burn, but your virtue, Mom wants to keep intact." Ananja remembered that sentence all his life. When he was 15, a novice monk from a nearby monastery came to the village for alms and saw Ananja was polite and intelligent. The teacher asked, "Do you want to study?" Ananja bowed his head. "I want to, but I have no money." The teacher smiled. "I don't need money. I need someone with a gentle heart who keeps their mother's teachings." So Ananja followed the teacher to the temple to start learning letters, precepts, and sutras. He learned very fast. But what made the teacher cherish him most was that whenever he made a mistake, Ananja always clasped his hands and said, "I apologize. I remember my mother once taught me not to lie even once." 10 years later, Ananja became a learned, humble young monk, respected in the region. When the teacher and student returned to the old village to visit, the villagers were all surprised. The boy who lit a fire to learn letters back then was now lighting up the minds of others. Someone asked, "You practice so well. Surely it's thanks to having a good teacher." Ananja replied, eyes welling up. "The teacher opened the way for me, but Mother was the one who gave me the root. Mother was poor but lived with virtue. That root is more precious than any lesson, any blessing." People sought out the old house. Only the earthen foundation and a few broken tiles remained. But on an old slab of wood, someone had carved a few lines with charcoal. "Mother has no wealth, only virtue, leaving you a roof of the heart that isn't torn." That was a straw house, but with virtue as the foundation. A poor child, but son, with a good seed in the heart, a small light, but one that lit up the path of wisdom for a lifetime. From a mother who knew how to keep her heart, a blessed child was born. That is the living proof that to have blessed children, teach them to keep virtue. Part 6. Virtue is not in words. Virtue is in a mind that harms no one. In life, there are people who speak very well, behave very properly, and project a very wholesome image. But when near them, others feel tired, tense, and uneasy. There are also people not good with words, not used to expressing morality through form, yet being near them feels pleasant. A heart feels light, and one feels the desire to live more kindly. Where does that difference come from? The difference lies in the mind. A person with virtue is not necessarily someone who preaches morality every day, but someone who keeps their mind from harming anyone, even in thought, because virtue is not what we show, but what we preserve. Someone may do charity, but if their heart looks down on the poor, that behavior has no virtue. Someone may go to the temple to chant sutras, but if they go out and curse or despise others, they are practicing on their lips, not in their hearts. Someone may preach morality, but harbor jealousy and calculation in their heart. That person is borrowing form to hide their mind. Therefore, virtue is not in words. Virtue is in the mind, and that mind is not one that never thinks wrong, but one that sees wrong arise and does not follow it. It is not about not getting angry, but being angry without uttering words that hurt people. It is not about not knowing winning and losing, but knowing yet still keeping the heart at peace, not losing righteousness for the sake of winning, not losing people for the sake of being right. That is the virtue that is silent but durable as stone, radiant as the moon, cool as the wind, deep as the earth. In Buddhism, there is something very subtle but important. Harming others in thought is also damaging virtue. Even if we don't say it, don't act on it. If anger arises in the mind, wanting to outdo others, wanting to harm others, wanting them to encounter bad things, that very thought is a cause for reducing virtue. Just as clear water gets stirred up from the bottom, the surface may still look clear, but if it doesn't settle, it will soon become cloudy. A person with a truly wholesome mind is one who keeps their heart from being evil toward anyone, even just in thought. The Buddha did not teach us to become perfect people to be recognized by others. The Buddha taught us to live so as not to cause suffering to ourselves and not to create karma that harms others, and to teach that keeping a pure mind is keeping virtue. Not harming anyone is building up virtue for oneself. In the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha taught there are 3 places where karma is created: body, speech, and mind. Among them, mind is the most subtle. A person who does not guard the mind is like someone building a house on sand. If the mind is not evil, words will be gentle, deeds will be good, and fruits will be good. In another sutra, when speaking to Venerable Sariputta, the Buddha taught, a practitioner must keep the mind like the earth. If someone throws filth, do not get angry. If someone plants flowers, do not cry out like water. If someone stirs it up, it eventually settles. Like wind, if someone blocks it, it does not stop. Like fire, if someone is cold, it does not refuse. That is the mind of a person with virtue. Those words are not reserved for monastics, but are also a profound lesson for laypeople who want to keep a wholesome mind and maintain virtue in daily life. Because every small thought is a brick, Good bricks build a house of virtue. Evil bricks build a prison of karma. Therefore, a wise person does not wait for words or actions to control themselves, but guards from within the thought. A sentence that seems harmless, if arising from an angry mind, can become long-lasting karma. A lawful act, if arising from arrogance, can still damage virtue. A jealous thought, even if not acted upon, is enough to poison our hearts and make our lives heavy. Keeping virtue is sometimes simply stopping a bad thought and replacing it with a compassionate one. The story of the cake seller and the wordless mind. At a small intersection inside the ancient city of Rajir, there was a stall selling fried cakes. The owner was an old woman named Daho, meaning the keeper. She had no husband or children, 10, lived alone. Every morning she woke up before it was fully light, kneaded dough, lit the fire, and prepared small batches of cakes to sell. Her stall wasn't big, just a few simple types of cakes like rice cakes, fried bean cakes, and sesame cakes, but they were fragrant, crispy, and clean. No one saw her complain. No one saw her fight for customers. Never heard her speak ill of anyone, criticize anyone, even those who bought on credit and didn't pay. When she finished selling, she went home. If there were cakes left, she gave them to neighbors or placed them in the alms bowls of monks passing by. People in the area called her the silent old lady because no matter what anyone said, she only smiled and clasped her hands, thinking, "People's business is theirs. I keep my own mind." One day, a stranger visited the market. He was a wealthy merchant traveling in a carriage, dressed luxuriously, passing Mrs. Daho's cake stall. He paused because the smell of the cakes was strangely fragrant. He got out of the carriage and asked the price of a cake. "Sir, 1 penny for one. I am used to eating cakes that cost for pennies." "Why so cheap?" "Because I don't take profit, just enough to live. Besides, I don't calculate money, I count the eater's heart." He laughed loudly, thinking she was joking. But when he tasted it, he was amazed because the cake was very delicious yet light, not cloying, giving a feeling of coolness in the heart. He ate too, stood silently for a long time, then asked, "Ma'am, may I ask, who taught you to make cakes? Why is it that when eating your cake, I feel as if someone is soothing my heart?" The old woman smiled gently. "I didn't learn from anyone. I just make cakes with a heart that holds no resentment against anyone. Every time I knead the dough, I think, may the person eating this today have more joy. Every time I drop a cake into the oil, I recite in my mind, in this life I will not hurt anyone. Then I fry it." The merchant was stunned. From that day on, he returned to the cake stall every morning, not because of hunger, but because he felt his heart lighten. He recounted that he used to be a person who let go of gold only to grasp more money, having many servants, but living in insecurity. Meeting her, hearing her speak, his heart felt washed. He abandoned his oppressive business practices, began to behave more softly, and opened his warehouse to distribute rice to the poor. Many people mocked him for following an old cake seller. He only replied, "I have never learned a good lesson as deep as the thing she didn't say." One day, a woman led her child to the cake stall, crying and begging, "My child is seriously ill. He can't eat anything, but he remembers your cake. Please help him eat one last time." The old woman asked nothing more, slowly took the dough, and while kneading, closed her eyes and recited, "May the good blessings from a heart without anger, without jealousy, without competition, follow this cake to reach that child." When the cake was fried, the child ate one and fell asleep. A few days later, the mother returned, bursting into tears. "He's recovered, ma'am. The doctor doesn't understand why. I only remember when he ate the cake, he said, 'I see light in my mouth.'" That story spread throughout the region. People flocked to buy cakes, hoping for luck. Some asked to learn the trade, but everyone who came heard her say one sentence: "It's not due to the cake. It's due to the cake maker keeping a mind that harms no one." That year she passed away in her sleep, right after frying the last batch of cakes. Inside her house, there was nothing but a handwritten notebook. Each page was a small vow. "Today I didn't make anyone sad. Today I didn't say anything to hurt people. Today I didn't think badly of anyone. Today I fried cakes with gratitude." And at the end of the notebook was a line written with shaky hands: "Virtue is not in words. Virtue is in the mind. If the mind harms no one, blessings will naturally return to whole." The merchant from years ago, upon hearing of her death, built a small porch right where the cake stall used to be, carving 3 words into the wooden pillar: "Mind without words." Anyone passing by stopped to clasp their hands, a good feeling naturally arising in their hearts. No one remembered what she preached, but everyone remembered that being near her, the heart felt at peace. And that is the blessing born from wordless virtue in the place of not harming anyone. Part 7. Virtue, the lamp guiding the way in the darkness of karmic retribution. In life, there are times we fall into very confusing circumstances. We live honestly, but still encounter obstacles. We don't harm anyone, but accidents keep coming. We recite Buddha's name, chant sutras, give to charity, keep precepts, but still suffer. At such times, if the mind is not steady, people easily doubt: is cause and effect truly fair? Does virtue really help anything in this life? Or worse, give up and stop caring because they don't see immediate good results. But that is when virtue needs to be held firm more than ever, because in the darkest segments of human life, virtue is the guiding lamp, not to show everything clearly at once, but to keep us from stumbling further in the very darkness of karmic retribution. There is karma sown from the distant past, now ripening. There are old mistakes we don't remember, but life doesn't forget. There are bitter fruits that are not punishment but purification, and in that moment, only a person keeping virtue has enough strength to step through without resentment, without creating new karma. What is virtue? It is the ability to keep the mind from being evil while being wrong, hurt, or misunderstood. Virtue is soft power, not fighting back, not harming back, but standing still, living straight. Virtue is a fire that does not burn but illuminates. It is a gentle light, not dazzling, but never extinguished by the storm. A person with virtue is not someone who doesn't suffer, but someone who suffers without losing their humanity, without trading a good heart for winning or losing, not selling faith in cause and effect to chase a shortcut. That is the quietest and most enduring strength. Blessings can be robbed, cheated, or wasted, but no one can take virtue away. Even if the body is in prison, reputation is lost, assets drift away. A person with virtue still maintains peace in the heart, because virtue is an invisible asset that brings visible results. Being loved by people, having favorable work, having a peaceful mind. In the twists and turns of karma, a person without virtue easily goes mad, easily gives up, easily acts recklessly. But a person with virtue, the more they suffer, the deeper they become. The more they fall into darkness, the brighter they are inside. And when the old fruit is fully ripened, that person rises like a tree just past the dry season, blooming again at the start of the rainy season. In the Samyutta Nikaya, the Buddha taught, a person with moral virtue is like a lamp in the wind. The wind cannot extinguish it because that lamp has a heart. For a person keeping good conduct, even if bad karma comes, it only touches the body, unable to penetrate the mind. He also taught in the Anguttara Nikaya that old karma may ripen, but a person with virtue and mindfulness will not fall into regret, will not create more new karma. Keeping virtue is keeping the path so as not to get lost in samsara. Another time, when asked, "Lord, if past karma is too heavy, how can it be transformed?" the Buddha replied, "Like a stone thrown into water will sink, but if the boat is strong enough, that stone cannot sink it." Keeping virtue is making a sturdy boat so karma does not drown the mind. That is, karma may come, but if virtue is great and the mind is bright, we are not swept away. Keeping virtue is keeping direction, not letting circumstances pull us astray. The story of the mother carrying stones and the unextinguished lamp. In a small village near the edge of a forest in northern India, there was a woman named Mitiyu who lived with her only son named Rahula. The family was poor. Her husband died early. Mitiyu did all kinds of work to raise her child, carrying firewood, raking straw, cutting grass, loading goods. There was a job she did for many years, carrying stones from the quarry to the market to exchange for rice. People in the village called her Mitiyu the stone carrier. Her back was hunched, her hands calloused, her feet cracked from the sharp mountain paths, but her mouth always smiled, and especially whatever anyone asked, she only said one sentence: "As long as the heart is still bright, even a dark road won't be lost." Rahula grew up poor but studied very well. Every day he carried his books over 3 slopes to reach the small school. Every time he saw his mother carrying stones, he ran out to help, but his mother waved him away. "You study. Mom carries stones, but Mom doesn't want you to have to carry this karma of poverty anymore." Once, a neighbor saw Mitu's shoulders bruised purple and told her to rest for a day, saying no one demanded she carry stones forever. She just smiled. "I don't carry because I'm forced. I carry because I know if I don't maintain virtue, my child will also get lost later." One year, Rahula passed the exam into a big school in the capital. Mitiyu cried with joy. She gathered all her savings, sold even her only wedding ring so her son would have provisions to go study. The day she saw him off, she only said, "Mom doesn't teach you much, but remember, when you meet a dark situation, keep virtue like keeping a lamp. It may not blaze brightly, but it will help you not to step into a hole." Rahula nodded, hugged his mother, and left. He carried with him not only books, but also his mother's silent virtue. However, life did not go smoothly. In his second year, Rahula was set up by friends, falsely accused of stealing money in class, suspended from school, turned away by acquaintances, shunned by the neighborhood. He quietly returned home. That night it rained. He stood in front of his house, soaked Anne collapsed. "Mom, I was wronged. I lived honestly, but still find no peace. You said keeping virtue is a lamp, but why am I still lost in the dark?" Mitu sat down, held her son's hand, asked nothing more. Then she quietly went inside, took out a small oil lamp, and lit it. The fire burned weakly because the wind blew hard. She cupped her hands around the lamp. The flame flickered but gradually stabilized. She placed the lamp in Rahula's hand. "Do you see, the flame is weak not because the fire is bad, but because the wind is strong. But if you keep your hand steady, the fire will brighten again. Keeping virtue is the same. When life raises a wind, keep the heart from the wind. Just don't let go, and the fire won't go out." From that day on, Rahula didn't go back to school, but went everywhere doing good deeds. He helped the poor, taught children to read, repaired the old hut for his mother. A year later, his old teacher discovered the injustice, cleared Rahula's name, and apologized in front of the class. Rahula was invited back to study, but he refused. He chose to become a monk. On the day of his ordination, the master asked, "Why do you become a monk?" He replied, "Because I want to keep the fire for others, keep virtue for life, just like my mother, carrying stones, but never weighing anyone down. My mother lived like a lamp. I want to continue that light." Many years later, Rahula became a respected teacher. Students visiting his house saw only a small hut. In the corner remained the old oil lamp. On the lamp's body were carved words his mother once wrote: "Keeping virtue is keeping the lamp. Don't let go when the wind blows." That was a poor mother who left no gold, nor lofty teachings, leaving only a durable virtue that became a guiding lamp in the darkness of karmic retribution. The story of the mother named Mitu, carrying stones all her life, living in poverty, but not complaining, not resenting, not dropping a single good thought, is a precious lesson for anyone walking through a dark segment of life. It is not just a story about a mother, but a symbolic image of a kind of virtue that needs no form, no display, but is strong enough to illuminate an entire generation. She didn't preach, but her way of life was a complete Dharma talk. No lofty words, only carrying stones every day, but carrying with a mind without resentment, a heart without poison, a thought without anger. That is the lamp of virtue, silent but shining long. As for Rahula, the son, he is the embodiment of so many people in life. There are times of suffering, times of injustice, times of getting lost amidst karma. But thanks to a lamp his mother kept, a teaching his mother sowed, he did not fall into darkness forever. That is the power of virtue transmitted through generations, lighting up people, keeping the heart free of hate, keeping life from getting lost. Therefore, that story reminds us that life may not be immediately fair, but cause and effect is very impartial. And virtue, though it may not help us avoid all suffering, will help us pass through suffering without losing the quality of being human. If any part of that story makes you remember your mother or someone who once kept virtue amidst poverty, who lived gently amidst a skewed life, if there's a moment in today's Dharma talk that makes you feel your heart soften, seeing some lamp just lit amidst the layers of darkness, then please do not let that lamp go out. Click subscribe to the Tan Kang audio channel as an act of dedicating merit, as a vow that I vowed to live keeping that light, so it does not stop with me but continues to be transmitted to others. Please leave a comment. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, like lighting one more lamp. And if you find this talk can help someone, please share it like a good seed set into the wind. May every lamp of virtue, however small, illuminate the way for one another amidst the challenging segments of life. Part 8. Blessings are given by heaven. Virtue is kept by oneself. In life, there are people born meeting favorable conditions, well-off families, good health, learning quickly, getting help in whatever they do. There are also people who meet opportunities wherever they go, loved wherever they enter. People often say they have lucky numbers or that person has blessings. It is truly so. Blessings are the result of good karma from previous lives. Like the gentle morning sunlight, like a shirt given by heaven ready to wear. But there is a scary thing. Even a beautiful shirt, if not worn carefully, will tear. Sunlight, though warm, if one doesn't know how to shelter, will burn the skin. Blessings, though great, if virtue is not kept, will run dry. Therefore, while blessings are what we already have, virtue is what needs to be kept. Blessings are the part given by heaven, but whether they are kept depends on us. A person with blessings, but without virtue, is like an heir to a large fortune who doesn't know how to keep it, so they waste it and break it. But a person with virtue, even if blessings are thin, can build them up again from the start. Like a person who knows how to plant rice, when this season ends, there will be another season. So virtue is the key to keeping all the good things that blessings bring. If virtue is not kept, blessings leave very quickly, usually without warning. If virtue is not kept, the heart becomes arrogant, speaks heavily, does things that hurt people. Then slowly everything is lost without realizing it. Many people, when things are favorable, become subjective, thinking, I'm talented, that's why it's like this. I have blessings, so I don't need to be careful. I've done many good deeds. Now I can live however I want. But blessings are not a permanent shield. Blessings are like money in the bank. Spending it will deplete it. Virtue is the ability to create new income, sustaining life for a long time, just like a person walking a long road carrying dry rations. Blessings are the available dry rations, but if one does not know how to walk each step mindfully, does not know how to keep the mind from wastefulness, does not create new karma, one will starve on the road. But a person who knows how to keep precepts, cultivate themselves, do good, speak well, and keep a peaceful mind is someone who walks while planting more fruits and flowers by the roadside. Blessings are given by heaven. Virtue is kept by oneself. The two are inseparable, but the deciding root is still virtue. In the Samyutta Agama, the Buddha taught that people who live many lives doing good are born into places of blessings. But if while enjoying blessings they generate an arrogant mind, harm people, and do not keep precepts, then blessings wear out and suffering arises, and no one can save them. In Dhammapada verse 121, the Buddha warned, "Think not lightly of evil, saying, it will not come to me. Drop by drop is the water pot filled. Similarly, do not look down on very small losses of virtue. A slight lie, a fleeting thought of looking down on others, helping someone, but expecting praise in the heart. All are gradually draining the account of virtue, which is the root keeping blessings." Conversely, in the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha taught that a person who keeps a pure mind, speaks loving speech, does not kill, knows how to give at the right time even if blessings are few, But virtue is great will naturally lead the way out of suffering. That is, blessings are blessings. Virtue is virtue. But virtue is the compass in the journey of cause and effect. The story of the merchant who lost blessings for despising a monk keeping virtue. When the Buddha was still in the world, in a city by the river, there was a merchant named Jiangta, famous for his wealth. His voice carried so much weight that if he nodded, people sold. If he shook his head, the whole street was apprehensive. His wealth was such that people often said Jiangta didn't live by karma, but by blessings. It was truly so. He was born with an estate ready from his parents. Plus, he was sharp and timely, knowing how to seize opportunities. His shops stretched from one street to another. Hundreds of hired workers respected him, not only for money, but for his authority. But authority is not necessarily virtue. One day, a young monk walked for alms past his shop. The monk was thin, his robe patched, his eyes deep, holding an old alms bowl. Seeing the monk's shadow from afar, Jiangta frowned. Is anyone still giving food to this monk? Probably stupid. His assistant bowed and whispered, "Sir, that is Venerable Sumeha. He lives in the forest, practices asceticism, but is very virtuous." Jiangta curled his lip. Virtue doesn't buy rice. Keeping precepts isn't as good as keeping money. Then he turned inside, waving his hand, "Go another way. We don't feed people who don't create value here." Venerable Sumeha said nothing, only clasped his hands, bowed, and continued walking. His steps were still light, his eyes still bright. But in Jiangta's heart, for some reason, he felt a chill pass through. He shuddered but thought nothing more. Strange things happened from that day on. His business began to have trouble. Goods were stolen, workers quit, transport broke down. Close business partners withdrew one by one. Jiangta was worried. He hired fortune tellers, shamans, made great offerings, but everything went further off track. His wife fell ill, his children got entangled in lawsuits. Someone came and said, "Perhaps you did something to damage your virtue. It seems a few months ago you spoke harshly to a monk." Jiangta frowned, then sighed. He quietly sought out the deserted forest where people said Venerable Sumeha was practicing. He brought gifts of gold and silver and knelt by the stream. "Venerable Sir, I repent. Before, I lived by blessings, but didn't know how to keep virtue. I despised monks. I used hurtful words. I was arrogant. Now please give me a chance to correct myself." Venerable Sumeha just smiled. "I am not angry with you, but you should be angry with yourself for tearing the shirt of virtue, which was the layer keeping your blessings warm." Then he told a story from a past life Jiangta himself used to be a great giver, building temples, making offerings, feeding the poor. So in this life, big blessings were born. But because he did not keep a respectful mind, did not continue to do good, and instead generated arrogance, jealousy, and harmed people, the old blessings were not enough to keep him, and there was no new virtue. Jiangta heard this and shed tears. From then on, he made a vow. Every deed would not lose virtue. Every word would keep a respectful mind. Every coin would be used correctly. Every day he would repent and do good. He did not repeat his old success, but slowly he found stability, peace of heart, family harmony, and people around him admired him not for wealth, but for virtue. Later, when Venerable Sumeha passed away, Jiangta erected a stone pillar in the deserted forest, carving a lion that made everyone passing by stop and bow their heads. Blessings are what heaven gives, but virtue is what we keep. Lose virtue and blessings fall. Keep virtue and blessings follow. Jiang's story is not only a lesson in cause and effect, but also a gentle yet profound warning. No matter how great the blessings, if not kept by virtue, they will wear out and collapse. Jiang was once fully equipped with blessings, power, and opportunity, but just because of a mind despising a practitioner, a thought looking down on a person living the way, a harsh word to someone keeping precepts, he tore the layer of virtue protecting his portion, blessings, with his own hands. That very mind of arrogance, despising those living correctly, was the knife cutting the flow of blessings, and only when he repented from his heart, corrected himself through behavior, and regained a respectful heart did peace return. That is a lesson for all of us. Maybe we aren't rich enough, but don't be poor in morality. Maybe we have blessings, then we must be even more careful to keep virtue, nurture the mind, and keep the heart from hurting anyone. Maybe life is favorable, but if the mind loses direction, words hurt people, and behavior is loose, those blessings will waste away like a boat with a hole in the bottom. No matter how much water it carries, it leaks gradually, and finally, only silent, enduring virtue is the thing that keeps everything. The inscription on that stone stele wasn't just for memorial, but to remind us every day as we step out into a stormy life. Blessings are what heaven gives, but virtue is what we keep. Lose virtue and blessings fall. Keep virtue and blessings follow. Part 9. Living with virtue. No worrying about wrong paths. No fear of disadvantage. In today's hurried life, there is one thing people are losing more and more: peace of mind. The rich fear losing, the poor fear lacking, the talented fear jealousy, the gentle fear being bullied, the sincere fear being hurt. Modern life makes people always be in a state of defense, competition, calculation, and many times we are tired not because of work, but because our hearts are not at peace. However, a person living with virtue is someone who doesn't worry about the wrong path, doesn't fear disadvantage, doesn't need to show off, and doesn't have to hide anything, because the virtue nurtured from within is a soft coat protecting the mind from the distortions of life. A person living with virtue doesn't need excessive defense, because if they don't sow seeds of harm, they don't worry about bad retribution. A person living with virtue doesn't live to please anyone, yet anyone near them feels comfortable. A person living with virtue speaks little, acts steadily, keeps an upright mind, so even entering a place of dispute, they aren't swept into gossip. And the most precious thing, a person living with virtue, when walking alone, is not afraid in their heart. When misunderstood, they don't lose themselves. When losing everything, character remains. I once met a farmer in the countryside of central Vietnam. He lived poor, but everyone cherished him. Once I asked why he wasn't afraid of being taken advantage of, oppressed, or looked down upon. He smiled gently. What they do is their business. If I keep my heart from being bad to anyone, I am at peace. As for what anyone thinks, let heaven calculate. That is the mind of a person with virtue, not worrying, not afraid. Not because they are right do they have to raise their voice. Not because others are wrong do they have to resent, like a big tree standing still under sun and rain. Not sad because of rain, not blaming because of sun, because the soul is deep, the roots firm. A person living with virtue doesn't need to outdo anyone, but still feels sufficient. Doesn't need to be hailed, but in others' eyes there is respect. Doesn't need to show off, but wherever they are, tension lessens. That is a good fruit that comes not by asking, but naturally, not by blessings, but by virtue. In the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha taught that a person who keeps precepts, whose mind harms no one, whose words do not divide, whose thoughts are not jealous, is like a person walking on a flat road, not afraid of falling, not worried about getting lost, not afraid of darkness. Also in Dhammapada verse 258, one who lives with wisdom, not arrogant or despising others, is like an ox carrying a heavy load of virtue. Though slow, it arrives. That verse sounds light but is concise. A person carrying virtue, though slow, still reaches the destination. A person without virtue, though fast, easily slips. A person living with virtue doesn't need to fear disadvantage, because if they haven't harmed anyone, disadvantage is also safe. No need to fear loss, because what is in the heart, no one can take. Such a person's mind is usually peaceful, even if life raises waves, and that is what the Buddha called dwelling in virtue. That is, the mind resides in deep peace, without being moved by external storms. The story of the gatekeeper and the lesson of not needing to outdo anyone to live in peace. In a big city by the Ganges River, there was a central market famous for being crowded, noisy, and fiercely competitive. Next to that market was a large commercial complex, a gathering place for all kinds of people: sellers, wealthy people, speculators, smugglers, profit snatchers, job jostlers. Every day thousands of people went in and out. But there was one person almost no one noticed. That was the old gatekeeper named Jayanta. Jayanta was not tall, not imposing. He just wore old clothes, always held a broom, had gentle eyes and slow steps. His job was to open and close the gate. But strangely, despite doing such a mundane job, no one in the market hated him. On the contrary, everyone liked him, because Jayanta never raised his voice at anyone. If a merchant broke the rules, he gently reminded them. If a cart pusher cut in line, he calmly advised. Even once, when a drunk youth cursed him terribly, he still clasped his hands, bowed, and only said, "Please go peacefully. Don't create karma in this life." Everyone asked, "Why aren't you angry? Why don't you fight back? They are clearly wrong." He just smiled. "Because I don't live to outdo anyone. I live for my heart to be at peace." The incident that truly made people respect Jayanta happened on a day a burglar broke in. A thief disguised as a delivery man sneaked into the commercial complex to steal assets. The police came to investigate. Everyone was scared because everyone had raised their voice, had lapses, had conflicts. Only one person was vouched for by the whole complex. The gatekeeper Jayanta couldn't possibly be involved. When interrogated, he only said, "I only know how to keep the gate straight, keep the heart upright. Besides that, I don't think badly of anyone, so I'm not afraid of anyone thinking badly of me." Those words stunned the police officer, and indeed, after investigation, the thief was caught. Jayanta was invited to the headquarters to be thanked. At parting, the officer asked, "Sir, how do you keep virtue amidst such a noisy and gossipy place?" He smiled, pointing to his chest. "I don't keep virtue by external actions. I keep it with a mind thought every morning. Today I won't outdo anyone. Today I won't harm anyone. Today I only need my heart to be at peace. Later, when he passed away, the whole commercial complex erected a small relief at the main gate where he used to stand, carving a line, keeping the gate for the market, but keeping the heart for oneself. No need to outdo anyone to live peacefully in the world. Janta. That was a gatekeeper whose virtue was as firm as a temple pillar. No one taught him moral principles. No one invited him to preach, but he lived by every good thought, every gentle deed, every clean intention, and so he didn't need to fear, didn't worry about losing, wasn't pulled into the wrong path, nor did he have to tense up to maintain a role in life. The story of Janta, a simple old gatekeeper, not highly educated, not powerful, yet living peacefully amidst a stormy city, is a powerful testament to the truth. Living with virtue, no need to outdo anyone, is enough to make the heart peaceful. He didn't go preaching, didn't explain the Dharma, didn't argue right and wrong, but every behavior, every word, every bow of his was a vivid Dharma talk on humility and virtue. In life, people try all ways to keep us standing by money, fame, and talent. But he kept us standing in people's hearts by one single thing: non-harming, not outdoing anyone, not needing praise, but trusted by everyone, cherished by everyone. And that is the fruit of virtue, a kind of peace that needs no proof. The most lesson-worthy thing about Janta is not that he was loved, but in the morning thought he repeated every day: today I won't outdo anyone. Today I won't harm anyone. Today I only need my heart to be at peace. That isn't an empty prayer, but the life orientation, a compass for him to pass through noise, gossip, misunderstanding, and injustice without losing himself. Such a person, though poor, is precious, though lowly is noble, though silent as spreading power. That story reminds us that there is no need to do big things to be at peace, no need to defeat anyone to be respected. Just live with virtue, and you won't fear the wrong path, won't worry about losing your place, won't be disadvantaged at all, because the firmest standing in a human life is not a position in society, but stability in the heart. And for the heart to be at peace, virtue must be present. Part 10. Virtue is the source of peace amidst the changing sea of life. Life is a river that flows ceaselessly, ups and downs, sowing and reaping, separation, jealousy, love, success, failure, gain and loss. And in that river, without a fulcrum, we easily lose ourselves amidst the waves. Blessings are temporary luck, but virtue is eternal dwelling. Virtue does not fluctuate with circumstances. Blessings go up and down, but as long as virtue remains, your heart is still sufficiently at peace. Virtue is like a small, clear spring in a desert. Even if the sun burns, it does not dry up. In the heart of a person keeping virtue, amidst work stress, social pressure, or personal conflict, one can still find a quiet corner, a stopping place for the heart to be at peace. Duty fades quickly, assets deplete quickly, names are forgotten quickly, but virtue is a mark that remains forever. People forget what you have, but they cannot forget what kind of person you are. The Buddha once compared virtue to a lotus seed. Even sitting in black mud, it still emits fragrance, still parts the water to rise and find the light. Therefore, living with virtue, sowing for oneself a source of peace amidst so much chaos, and impermanence. In Dhammapada verses 211 to 212, the Buddha taught, no need to be wealthy, just need a quiet mind. No need to speak up, just need to live compassionately. Because blessings are ephemeral, virtue is the fulcrum against impermanence. And in the Hemavada Sutta verse 142, do not believe judgments that are not your own mind. Only when you yourself know clearly you keep your mind like a clear spring is it truly peaceful. Virtue is normal footsteps, persevering on the path of not harming people, not generating anger, not holding on to ego. No need to become a monk. No need to do big things, just need to keep sincerity every day. The Buddha taught, sincere mind loving speech, sincere mind no anger, sincere mind no jealousy. A person keeping those three minds, even stepping lightly, is like a flower blooming amidst rocks. That is why virtue does not suffocate amidst chaos. It becomes a source of peace for oneself and those around. The story of the washerwoman and the unceasing stream. In a rural village by the forest near the border of Magadha, there was a woman named Subhat who worked washing clothes by the stream. Every day she carried baskets of dirty clothes from the wealthy families in the village, washing by hand in the small stream. Gray hair, tan skin, hands full of calluses. Subhat had no husband or children, living alone in an old thatched hut. But strangely, anyone meeting her felt a very rare peace. As if she were a quiet shadow amidst a hurried life. Someone asked her, "You live poor, without a decent house, without children or grandchildren. Why don't you seem sad?" She just smiled. "I'm not rich, but I owe no one. I don't have much, but I've never taken anything not mine. I'm not loved much, but I show no resentment for anyone. Just that is enough for my heart to be at peace." The questioner was stunned, then passed the word around. Mrs. Subhat was someone no one could hate. Meeting her naturally made the heart soften. One day, a girl in the village named Anita, daughter of an official, ran away from home due to a broken love affair. She wandered crying by the stream, intending to throw herself in. Mrs. Subhat sat on the other bank, didn't call, didn't stop her. She just lit a small oil lamp and placed it near the bank. The light was weak but shimmering. The girl saw the light, looked over, met the old woman's gentle eyes, and burst into tears. The old woman only said one sentence, "Life is a stream, it flows forever, but our heart is the bank. If the heart is kept calm, the water cannot wash it away." Anita rested her head on the woman's lap, crying like a child. The year she died, the whole village saw her off in silence. No mourning clothes, no drums or gongs, only whispers. She lived a life harming no one. She was like a stream passing through life without muddying anyone. People erected a small stele by the stream, carving the sentence she often said, "Keeping virtue is keeping the stream in the heart. Even if life changes, there is still a place for the heart to return." The story of Mrs. Subhat, the poor washerwoman by the stream, is a simple proof saturated with moral principle. A person living with virtue needs no authority, no title, yet leaves a mark of peace in the world. She had no degree, no descendants, owned no big house, but she had what so many wealthy, successful people are wearing themselves to find: a mind without resentment, a heart without disorder, a life without error. She didn't preach the Dharma, but lived as a Dharma talk. didn't teach the path, but opened the way for others to find the light in their own hearts, left no assets, but left a source of peace in everyone who ever met her. We may not do great things, but if every day we keep a good thought, a gentle word, a behavior that harms no one, we are digging a spring of virtue for ourselves. And if virtue is kept, even if life changes, fluctuates, takes everything away, it cannot take the peace running deep in our hearts, like the words Mrs. Sue Butt left behind. Keeping virtue is keeping the stream in the heart. Even if life changes, there is still a place for the heart to return. If in that story you see the shadow of someone who once lived gently, quietly, and left a gentle stream in your heart, if a part of today's Dharma talk makes you breathe slower and feel less afraid amidst the fluctuations of life, then please don't let that pass like the wind. Click subscribe to the Tan Kang audio channel as a way to sow a drop of good water for spiritual life. Share this talk like a small stream that can flow into the heart of someone thirsty for peace, someone tired. And if you find your heart softening after listening, please leave a comment. Namo Amitabha Buddha, like a flower blooming on a deserted riverbank. May every word of the Dharma be like a clear spring soaking into the dry soul of the human heart. May virtue be like an underground stream, silently nourishing great peace. Living with virtue is the root of all peace. A person with virtue, even without seeking fame, is respected. Without seeking money, as enough without competing, is peaceful among people. Virtue is something no one can give us. We must sow it ourselves with every good thought, every gentle word, every behavior that harms neither others nor oneself. When we live with virtue, we are establishing a zone of good karma protection around us. Thanks to that, bad karma is hard to intrude. Evil people are hard to harm. Grievances are hard to arise. Virtue is like invisible armor, not hard but durable, not fighting back but keeping inner stability. In the family, a person keeping virtue is the pillar for harmony. Parents living with virtue, children feel the root of character. Spouses living with virtue, words hurt less. Trust is rebuilt. In the community, a person with virtue is a factor of peace. No need for high position, just keeping a good heart. They are a cool breeze amidst the heat of anger. In a society with many fluctuations, blessings can change, but virtue, if preserved, will naturally steer life toward the light. Virtue is what helps us not get lost in fame and gained, not be deluded by praise or blame, not fall into hatred when insulted. Virtue is also the practice extending good cause and effect. Every time we generate a thought of non-harming, it is a good seed sown in the field of the mind. Every time we restrain a fit of anger, we avoid 100 regrettable things. Every time we choose to keep quiet instead of winning or losing, we are building a higher floor in the house of blessings. And the miraculous thing is that a person with virtue, even in adversity, maintains the quality of an awakened person. May be poor but not poor in heart, may be misunderstood but not resentful, may be losing everything but not losing oneself. On the path of liberation, virtue is indispensable luggage. Precepts are the foundation of virtue. Keeping precepts is training virtue by natural rules. A practitioner, whether lay or monastic, if not taking virtue as the root, concentration will not be deep. Practice will not last, wisdom will not shine. Virtue is the inner light shining when no one sees, an invisible set spreading, not by mouth, not by form, but by natural aura. And finally, living with virtue is the practice helping us dwell in this life and create good conditions for the next life. A person who lost blessings but has virtue can rebuild from the start. A person with many faults, but who knows how to repent and patch up virtue, can still change direction. But a person living without virtue, even if receiving much, will sooner or later lose it all. Because blessings are the part we have, but virtue is the part we keep. Blessings are what come, virtue is what stays. Blessings create clouds, but virtue creates peace. So cultivating virtue is cultivating for oneself, for family, for those around, and also a way to establish a good future for this life and the next. To live with virtue, one does not need to do anything truly great, but start from the smallest things every day. Start by keeping the heart straight in the most easily skewed situations. When angry, when misunderstood, when not recognized, when someone goes against your will. Every time that happens, instead of reacting by instinct, pause for one breath, ask silently, is what I am about to do, about to say, going to hurt people? If yes, don't do it. If no, do it with a pure heart. Every morning before leaving the house, we can silently vow 3 things. Today I ask not to harm anyone. Today I ask to keep a clear mind. Today I ask to live wholesomely whatever happens. That simple vow, if repeated every morning, is a reminder for the mind not to forget the direction. Besides, practice doing silent good deeds, helping someone without waiting for gratitude, speaking good words without needing praise, keeping silent when others need to speak, sharing when someone needs to listen, and especially keep the heart free from envy, jealousy, contempt, and resentment, even when no one knows inside. Because virtue lies not in what we show, but in what we silently refuse, give up, and transform. Every night before sleeping, dedicate merit. May all that I thought, said, and did today, if there is any good, be dedicated to the departed, the living, and may I myself be close to the light of a non-harming mind. That dedication, if sincere, is a circle of protection for consciousness during sleep and even for lives thereafter. Weekly, if possible, spend a session reviewing what virtue we have kept, what we lost, where we were negligent, where we improved. This is called mirroring virtue. Not to judge, but to correct. A practitioner is not afraid of being wrong, only afraid of not knowing they are wrong. Gradually, with perseverance, bit by bit, virtue will become character, become fragrance, become a supporting force for us to pass through even the most arduous periods. Living like that, even if no one knows, heaven knows. Even if no one recognizes, the heart is at peace. Even if no one rewards, blessings silently grow. There is a type of tree that needs no sun, no good soul, no caretaker, yet grows in rock crevices, because its roots hold deep. Its leaves are compact. Its roots do not compete with the grass beside it. That tree is not tall, but everyone passing by feels something peaceful. Virtue is like that tree, needing no display, demanding no recognition, waiting for no one to water it, just needing to hold deep into the soul of a good heart, rising with thoughts of not harming anyone, providing shade by being sparing with words and keeping precepts. A person living with virtue, even if not yet having great blessings, is like a tree standing firm on a slope, and one day, if there is a great wind, others may fall, but the person with virtue still stands. Because virtue is the root, blessings are just the top. Virtue is the part that stays when everything else is lost. Virtue is a gentle light, not dazzling, but lasting. Dear friends, living in this world, if someone generates the thought I must succeed, must be recognized, must have a voice, then they will fall into a race without end. But if someone generates the mind I only wish to live without harming, keep a straight heart, leave no resentment in words, leave no evil in the mind, then that person has begun to live with virtue. And living with virtue means eating to your heart's content, not eating with the mouth, but eating with peace in the mind, eating with sleep without worrying, eating with words without fear, eating with a presence that makes others feel easy to be near. From today, if you can't do much, please quietly cultivate virtue. If you don't know where to start by keeping loving speech. Keep the mind from anger, keep actions from harm.